I borrowed my mom's phone one afternoon and, without meaning to, stumbled across a hidden folder. Inside were family vacation photos, shots I'd never laid eyes on before. There were pictures from my sister's birthday, family trips with both my parents, and not a single one included me. The following morning, I sent them a message, "Don't reach out to me again." What happened after that completely knocked the wind out of me. As the first light of day spilled over the glass towers of Chicago, I was already sitting at my desk. My name's Clara Hunter, and I'd been working at Creative Pulse for 9 years, holding the title of senior designer. Morning sun poured in through the tall windows, casting a glow on the one photo frame I kept on my desk. It held only my graduation photo. That day, I'd carefully pulled my hair into a tight ponytail and worn a modest navy blouse with a tailored gray pantsuit, simple, clean, but sharp. Around the office, people often called me a perfectionist. Some kept their distance because of it, but nobody ever questioned the quality of my work. I took a long breath, sipped from my coffee mug, and turned to my inbox. One message blinked in the corner of my screen. It was from my mom. I hovered for a second, then clicked. "Clara. Still no reply about your father's birthday party. It's this Sunday. Lila even took time off work." I sighed. Of course she did. My mom, Evelyn, spent 28 years teaching English at Oak Park High just outside Chicago. Her students adored her. Her coworkers respected her. And at home, she played the role of the perfect, loving mother, especially when it came to her youngest daughter, Lila. I muttered under my breath, "I'll get back to it later," and marked the email as read. I didn't want to go to that party. My dad, Richard, had spent more than 2 decades as a sales manager at Whitmore Realty, a local real estate firm. He was one of those guys who could charm just about anyone, always smiling, always pleasant. Clients loved him. But at home? He basically echoed whatever Mom said and rarely stepped in when things got tense between me and Lila. To be honest, I'd always described my relationship with my father as polite distance. He liked to brag about my grades or my job, sure. But actually know me? Not once did he really try. His attention, just like Mom's, was always focused on Lila. Just hearing her name stirred something complicated inside me. Lila worked in personal banking over at First National. Lately, word was going around that she was about to be promoted to assistant branch manager. With her long blonde hair and bright blue eyes, she used to be captain of the cheer squad in high school. Even now, she kept up a lively social life, always going out with friends, always at the center of the fun. Mom's pride and joy. Of course. Her favorite, I whispered. It wasn't some petty sibling rivalry talking. It was the kind of quiet conclusion you draw after years of being treated like a distant relative at your own family table. At every holiday or get-together, Mom would light up with stories about Lila's life, while she'd ask me about mine like she was reading from a script. My phone buzzed on the desk. "Grandpa," the screen said. My expression softened instantly. It was my mom's dad, Henry. Out of everyone, he might have been the only one I ever felt truly close to. A retired judge with old-school manners and plenty of money, Grandpa always made time for me. "Good morning," I answered, trying to sound cheerful. "Good morning, Clara. How've you been?" His voice came through, warm and familiar. "I'm okay. Just swamped with work. How are you?" "Oh, I'm still keeping the younger guys on their toes," he chuckled. "About Richard's birthday party, you are coming, right?" I hesitated. "I'm not sure yet, Grandpa. Work's got me tied up." He let out a long sigh on the other end. "I get it, Clara. I know family gatherings aren't easy for you. But, could you come, just for me? I'm not getting any younger. These chances to have the whole family together, they're becoming rare." I shut my eyes and pressed my palm to my forehead. How could I say no to that? "All right, Grandpa," I said softly. "I'll come." "That's a relief to hear. Also, I saw the article about your latest project." Excellent work, really. You've got real talent. Tears stung the corners of my eyes. After we hung up, I sat quietly, staring out the window. For as long as I could remember, I'd always felt like the outsider in our family. People said I was too serious, too rigid. At home, that translated to boring. Cold. Difficult. Over the years, it started feeling like they just stopped inviting me altogether. Holidays, birthdays, even Thanksgiving. They'd say things like, "Clara must be busy." And sure, sometimes I was. But other times? I'd schedule work just to avoid waiting for the inevitable brush off. I swiveled back to my computer and opened my calendar. Next Sunday was wide open. Slowly, I typed Dad's birthday party into the empty box and hit save. Let's see what kind of awkward small talk I get this time, I muttered, turning back to work. Part of me wanted that closeness I saw in other families. I craved that unspoken bond. But I was always bracing for the next rejection. I didn't want applause, I just wanted to be seen. By Saturday afternoon, I was standing on the front steps of my mom's house. The party was tomorrow, but I'd come early to print some documents for a new design project. My own printer had died, and I had a tight deadline. "Clara, you made it?" Mom said as she opened the door. She gave me a stiff hug. "Good timing," she added. "Lila just went out for party decorations, and I just placed the cake order." "Thanks," I murmured. "Can I use the printer?" "Of course." "Go ahead, it's in the study," she said. "Oh, by the way, did you already get your father a gift?" I gave a small smile. "Yeah. I found him that vintage watch he's been wanting." "That's nice," Mom said, though her tone was flat. "Lila bought him a golf set. He's going to love that." I just nodded and quietly made my way upstairs. Her words stung, but I kept my expression neutral. Once I got to the study, I booted up the computer, only to hit a password screen. "Mom?" I called. "What's the password?" "Oh. I changed it last week," she called back, then came upstairs. "Here," she said, handing me her iPhone. "Use my phone. Your files came by email, right? I need to confirm the cake details with the bakery. I'll be back in half an hour." "All right. Thanks." The second she left, I let out a long breath. I unlocked the email app and started digging for the files I'd sent myself. She downloaded the file and sent it to print. As the printer hummed to life, I found myself with nothing to do, just standing there. Without thinking much about it, I returned to the home screen of Mom's phone and casually started scrolling through her apps. That's when something caught my eye, a folder labeled Private Albums. I squinted. "Private albums?" I murmured under my breath. Curiosity got the better of me, and I tapped it open. Suddenly, the screen was filled with a wall of photo folders. Names like Lila's birthday, Florida trip 2021, Christmas dinner, and family weekend stared back at me. I frowned. None of these events had ever been mentioned to me. Weird. I tapped on Lila's birthday first. Images filled the screen, Lila beaming in front of a cake, surrounded by our parents, aunts, uncles, and friends. My stomach dropped. This was from just 7 months ago. I hadn't even known it happened. No invite. Nothing. My fingers trembled. What the hell? I whispered as I opened Florida Trip 2021. There they were, my parents and Lila grinning on a sunny beach in Miami. I checked the date. It was the exact same week they told me we couldn't do a family vacation because of my important presentation. They'd lied to me. My voice shook as I repeated it. They lied. Next, I tapped on Christmas dinner. That was the year I'd spent Christmas alone, watching snow pile up outside my apartment window, after being told there were no special plans. But these photos? They showed a full-blown family celebration, beautiful dinner table, everyone smiling. Even Grandpa Henry was there. My heart was pounding now. I tapped on Family Weekend and flipped through even more pictures. Laughter, games, group hugs, everything you'd expect from a close-knit family. Except I wasn't in a single one. I went through every album in that folder. Not one photo had me in it. Not a single one. Why? I whispered, barely able to breathe. My cheeks were wet, but I hadn't even noticed the tears falling. The printer had already stopped, but I didn't hear it. I couldn't hear anything. That's when the front door creaked open. Clara? Did you finish printing the materials? Mom's voice rang from downstairs. I jolted, quickly swiped back to the home screen, and wiped at my face. My heart still pounded, but I tried to sound steady. Yeah, I did. She came into the study just as I zipped my bag shut. I was already standing, ready to leave. You're heading out already? She asked, sounding a little surprised. Yeah. I've still got some things I need to take care of. I avoided looking at her. I see. But you're still coming to the party tomorrow, right? I gave a small nod but didn't say anything. Without another word, I made my way down the stairs. Clara, are you all right? Something happened, she called after me, her voice laced with concern. Nothing. I'll see you tomorrow, I said quickly, stepping out the front door before she could ask more. Once I was in my car, I rested my forehead against the steering wheel and let the tears fall again. Quiet, uncontrollable sobs. That awful, aching suspicion I'd carried for years? It had just been confirmed. And there was no denying it now. They'd left me out on purpose. Later that night, back in my apartment, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept replaying things from the past, little comments, throwaway lines that now felt like clues. Clara's too busy. She probably wouldn't be interested. Don't tell her, she might get hurt. Those lines used to confuse me. Now they made perfect sense. By the time sunlight crept through the window, I had made up my mind. I grabbed my phone and typed out one simple message. I sent it to every family member I had, don't contact me anymore. Then I blocked every single one of them. Calls. Texts. Social media. All of it, gone. And as I sat there, surrounded by silence, I felt something strange wash over me. It wasn't just grief. It was a weird blend of heartache and relief. Spring was beginning to stir in Chicago, the air growing softer, the trees starting to bud, like the city itself was waking up from something. In a way, I was too. 3 months had passed since I'd cut them off. I kept my distance. Threw myself into my work. My efforts didn't go unnoticed. Last month, I even won an award for a major campaign I'd led for a well-known beverage brand. I was standing by the window in my office, sipping coffee and staring out at the skyline when Monica, one of my colleagues, walked over. Hey, she said, smiling, you want to check out that new yoga class this weekend? I heard the instructor's incredible. Monica had become one of the few people I genuinely connected with since all of this began. Yeah, I said, returning her smile. That actually sounds great. Just then, my phone vibrated. It was a call, from an unfamiliar number. Normally, I would have ignored it. But something made me press accept. Hello? Clara, it's me. My heart stuttered. Grandpa? I'm sorry, I had to call from a different number. I heard you blocked everyone in the family. His voice was calm, but I could hear the sadness behind it. I stood up and headed into the empty conference room. I didn't mean to block you. No need to explain, he said gently. I get it. But, there's something I need to talk to you about. In person. I paused. What is it? It's not something we should talk about over the phone. There was urgency in his voice I wasn't used to hearing. Okay, I finally said. I'll come by at 6. After I hung up, I walked back to the window and looked out at the city. The idea of seeing him again stirred something in me, a strange mix of hope and dread. That evening, I drove to my grandfather's home, a sprawling, elegant estate tucked away in a quiet, upscale corner of northern Chicago. When I pulled up through the stone gates, the manicured gardens greeted me like something out of a movie. Walter, his longtime butler, opened the door and welcomed me in. I followed him through the familiar hallway to Grandpa's study. He was seated by the fireplace in one of those old leather chairs that still smelled faintly of tobacco and books. Though he still carried himself with dignity, he looked thinner than I remembered. "Clara. I'm really glad you came." He stood and pulled me into a hug. I felt my shoulders relax. "It's good to see you, Grandpa." He motioned to the chair across from him. "Have a seat." "I want to start by saying this," he said. "I don't blame you. Not for any of it." I nodded, unable to speak. "I know about the photos," he added quietly. "Evelyn told me. She said you found them." I blinked back tears. "Why, Grandpa? Why am I the only one who?" My voice broke. "Who was left out?" he finished gently. "That's what I want to talk about today." He stood and walked to a bookshelf, pulling down an old, weathered photo album. "I've kept this over the years," he said, handing it to me. "It's our family's history." I opened it. The pages were filled with pictures I'd never seen, young versions of my mom, my grandparents, holidays long before I was born. Then I turned to a page and froze. I whispered. "Yes," he said quietly. "Your mother and her sister. Your Aunt Margaret." "Aunt?" I asked, stunned. "Mom has a sister?" He corrected me gently. "Her name was Margaret. She died, 34 years ago." "In a car accident," Grandpa said softly. I kept flipping through the album, studying the photos. Aunt Margaret looked so much like Mom, but her eyes, there was something warmer in them. Softer. More open. "But what does any of this have to do with what's been happening in our family?" I asked. Grandpa let out a long, heavy sigh. "Evelyn and Margaret were always in competition with each other. Margaret was the bright one, outgoing, well-loved by everyone around her." He paused, choosing his next words carefully. "Your mom, she was quieter. More reserved. But also, jealous. After Margaret died, something in Evelyn changed. That bitterness she'd always kept buried? It started showing." I swallowed hard. "But why take it out on me?" He looked at me with such sad eyes. "Because you remind her of Margaret, Clara. Not just in how you look, but in your nature. You're honest. You care about others. You lead with integrity. And for Evelyn, that might stir up memories she never really dealt with." I didn't know what to say. My throat felt tight. I stared down at the photo of my aunt, trying to make sense of it all. "But that still doesn't make it right," Grandpa said, his voice suddenly firmer. "What your mother, Richard, and Lila did to you, it's not just hurtful. It's unforgivable." "They lied to me," I said quietly, the words almost sticking in my throat. "They told me there were no family plans when there clearly were." "They lied to me too," Grandpa snapped. "Told me you were always too busy, or not interested. And I believed them." He shook his head in frustration. "I should have known better." "You didn't know," I said gently, tears filling my eyes. "How could you?" "If I had known, Clara, I would have stopped it. I would have stepped in," he said with conviction. "Actually, Lila came to me a few weeks ago. In tears. Told me everything. I think her guilt finally caught up with her." I looked up, stunned. "Lila?" He nodded. Your silence, it hit her harder than I think any of us expected. She spent her whole life doing what your mother told her. But this time, something shifted. I think her conscience got the better of her." He stood and walked to his desk, hands clasped behind his back. "Clara, I've made up my mind. Next Saturday, I'm hosting a dinner here. A formal gathering. I'm inviting the entire family. My heart skipped. Wait, what? I want you there, he said, his voice steady and serious. This isn't just a dinner. It's a statement. And I have something important to share with everyone. What are you planning? I asked, wary. That's a surprise for the evening, he replied with a hint of a smile. But know this, I'm proud of you. Of your strength, your honesty. And it's time the rest of this family sees what I see. I took a deep breath, everything inside me buzzing with doubt. I wasn't sure I was ready to face them again. But when I looked into Grandpa's eyes, I saw how resolute he was. All right, I said quietly. I'll come. He smiled. Good. I'll send out formal invitations. It's a black tie dinner. I want this night to feel important. Like the beginning of something new. I turned to leave, then paused at the door. Are you sure about this? It kind of feels like you've got something big up your sleeve. He just smiled. Don't worry. Sometimes the truth needs a proper stage. Saturday evening came faster than I'd expected. I stood at the front door of Grandpa's mansion in a fitted black cocktail dress, my stomach knotted with nerves. Through the windows, I could see movement, my family had already arrived. Mom. Dad. Lila. Their faces said everything. Mom looked tense. Dad wore his usual confused, clueless expression. Lila, she looked straight at me. There was guilt in her eyes. Clara, Dad said as he approached. It's been a while. Yeah, I replied flatly. The air thickened with awkward silence. Just then, Grandpa entered the room. He wore a black tux and carried himself like a man on a mission. Everyone, please take your seats, he announced. Tonight's not just about dinner. Once we'd gathered around the table, he stood up and raised his glass. Before we eat, he began, there's something I need to say. His tone shifted, deep and commanding. For years, I've taken pride in this family. In our name. In the values we stand for, integrity, unity, and honesty. He looked at me. And tonight, I want to bring those values back to the surface. He turned to face the others. Evelyn. Richard. Lila, he said, each name cutting like glass. I know what you've done to Clara. He paused. You left her out. Lied to her. Shut her out of this family, and for what? Pettiness? Jealousy? Mom's face turned pale. Dad, please. Don't, he snapped. Don't talk. You don't get to justify this. This is not the legacy I ever wanted to leave behind. Then, he walked over to me and rested his hand on my shoulder. Clara Hunter is the most honorable, hardworking person in this family. Her success? Earned entirely on her own. No favors. No shortcuts. Tears welled up again. I blinked fast, trying not to let them fall. And tonight, he said, turning back to the room, I'm making something very clear. He straightened. I am naming Clara as my heir. To the Morrison family fortune. And to the business. The room went still. Mom's mouth opened in disbelief. Dad half rose from his seat. Lila went ghostly white. Dad, what are you saying? Mom stammered. I'm saying it's done, he replied coldly. When I pass, Clara will inherit everything, my estate, my holdings, and full authority over the Morrison Real Estate Company. The legal paperwork is already finalized. I sat frozen, barely breathing. This isn't revenge, he said, addressing everyone. It's about giving the right responsibility to the right person. One who's proven herself. One who deserves it. He raised his glass again. To Clara Hunter. My granddaughter. And the future of this family. My hand trembled as I lifted my glass and met his gaze. A week later, I sat in the executive conference room at Ashford Real Estate, reviewing a stack of freshly printed documents. My new business cards sat on the desk, and even though they had my name printed in bold under the title director, it still didn't feel real. The door knocked. Grandpa stepped in with a smile. "Settling in?" he asked. Slowly, I said with a nervous smile. "I've got a lot to learn." He took a seat across from me. "You'll be fine. You've got an eye for detail, a mind for strategy, and your background in advertising? It gives you a unique edge. You'll bring fresh energy to this place." I glanced out the window at the towers downtown. "What about Dad and Lila?" Grandpa's face clouded slightly. "They're adjusting. On the surface, they've accepted your role. Richard is still in sales. Lila just started as a financial assistant. Do you really think that'll work?" I asked quietly. "They need time," he said. "Time to sit with the truth. Time to process the shift." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a file. "Starting today, you'll have full access to every company record. Financials, past transactions, internal reports. Everything. To lead this business, you need to understand its foundation." And so, I started splitting my time, half at the agency, half at Ashford Real Estate. I dove in headfirst. Late nights. Stacks of reports. But slowly, something started to click. My strengths, my ability to analyze, organize, and lead, started making a difference. And for the first time in years, I wasn't chasing anyone's approval. I was just becoming myself. I'd been combing through the company's financial records for weeks, 6 years' worth of transactions, payments, and internal reports. Night after night, I stayed late at the Morrison office, eyes locked on my screen, cross-referencing every number, every name, every detail. 3 weeks in, something started to feel off. I furrowed my brow as I stared at the same set of figures again. Something wasn't adding up. "That's weird," I murmured. I dug deeper. Opened the accounting system, pulled up old bank statements, scanned through deposits, withdrawals, and client interactions. I even printed out ledgers and spread them across my desk. That's when I saw it. There was a clear pattern. Money had been siphoned from the company regularly over the past 6 years. Quietly. Strategically. The accounts it was sent to were buried behind layers of obfuscation, but I managed to trace them. And I couldn't believe what I found. Those accounts were tied to personal investments, ones made by my father and my sister. My stomach dropped. My hands trembled as I gathered the documents and printed everything out. I packed it all into my bag and left the office, my heart pounding. I needed to talk to Grandpa. Right away. The next morning, we sat in his study. "I found something," I said, laying the files on the desk. His face turned grim. "Do you have evidence?" "Yes. It's all right here." I unfolded the papers and pointed to the highlighted sections. Over the past 6 years, nearly $4 million have been siphoned from the company. They used fake invoices, inflated charges, falsified transactions, all to move money into their personal accounts. I looked up. It was Dad and Lila. Grandpa stared at the documents for a long time. His face hardened. "I never saw it coming," he said finally. "My own daughter. My own granddaughter." He turned away, walking slowly to the window, hands clasped behind his back. "What are you going to do?" I asked gently. He let out a sigh. "I thought about pressing charges. But that would drag this family's name through the mud." He turned back to me, face firm. "Instead, I'll call a family meeting." "A meeting?" I echoed, confused. "I'm inviting everyone," he said. "All of them, cousins, uncles, every branch of the Morrison and Hunter families. Around 40 people." His tone was steel. "They all deserve to know the truth." 1 week later, the mansion buzzed with more voices than I'd heard in it my entire life. A full house of relatives, catching up, exchanging pleasantries, most of them unaware of what was about to unfold. I sat beside Grandpa, keeping my composure as best I could. Across the room, I saw my dad and Lila. They looked nervous, glancing around like they were waiting for the ground to crack beneath them. After dinner, Grandpa rose from his seat and tapped his glass with a spoon. "Everyone," he began. "Thank you for coming tonight. I've called this gathering at a pivotal moment for our family." He paused, letting the silence settle. "My time in this world is drawing to a close. But before I go, I want to secure the future of this family's legacy." He motioned to me. I stood up and stepped beside him. "Tonight, I officially name Clara Hunter the next president of Ashford Real Estate." A quiet gasp rippled through the room. Whispers and surprised glances followed. "But before we go further," Grandpa said, "there's something else I need you all to hear." He slowly turned to face the group, eyes sharp and clear. "Recent reviews of our company's finances uncovered a serious breach of trust. Funds were stolen from Ashford Real Estate. Records were forged. Clients were misled." Dead silence. "Richard. Lila. Please stand." My father and sister rose slowly, visibly shaken. "You both violated this family's trust," Grandpa said firmly, holding up the file I'd given him. "The evidence is right here." "That's not what it looks like," Dad said, his voice cracking, trying to sound indignant. "You'll have your chance to speak," Grandpa said. "But the facts are plain. You took money from the company and lied about it." Mom looked at them in disbelief, her face pale. "Is this true?" she whispered. Lila didn't say a word. Her eyes were filled with tears. Dad lowered his head. "This is my decision," Grandpa said. "Richard and Lila are to be removed from all positions within Morrison Company. Effective immediately." A wave of murmurs spread across the room. People turned to each other in disbelief. I just stood still, a quiet storm brewing behind my ribs. The same family that had cast me aside was now being cast out themselves. And yet, I didn't feel triumphant. There was no revenge in my chest, only a calm sense that the truth had finally surfaced. The sun beamed down through the glass walls of our brand new office building as we prepared to celebrate the company's one-year anniversary under new leadership. I stood by the window, staring out at the city skyline. It still felt surreal. "Everything's ready, President," my assistant Tessa said, poking her head in with a smile. I smiled back. "Thank you. Your grandfather's downstairs," she added. "Most of the guests are here already." I took a deep breath and rolled my shoulders. "All right," I said. "Let's go." As the elevator descended, I reflected on everything that had happened over the past year. After uncovering the fraud, I resigned from Creative Pulse and threw myself into reviving Ashford Real Estate. The early days were rough, skeptical clients, cautious investors, but slowly, we rebuilt. With honesty. With heart. We'd grown 30% in 1 year. And people had started to believe in the Morrison name again. When I got to the lobby, Grandpa was there, standing tall with the help of his cane. Right beside him was my mother. "Clara," she said softly, eyes slightly apprehensive. "Thanks for coming, Mom," I said, keeping my tone even. Our relationship was delicate. After she split from Dad, she made repeated efforts to reconnect. Apologies. Letters. Calls. At first, I kept my distance. But with time, I allowed small cracks in the wall. "You've built something incredible," Grandpa said, wrapping an arm around my shoulder. "I couldn't be prouder." "I owe it all to you," I replied. "You gave me the chance." The venue was filled with energy, clients, employees, partners, all gathered to honor the company's turnaround. Renderings of new properties lined the walls. Hope was everywhere. When it came time for the speech, Grandpa stood at the front. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "a year ago, I made one of the most difficult decisions of my life. I passed the torch. And now, I know I passed it to the right hands." He held his hand out to me. As I joined him at the front of the room, applause echoed in my ears. Later, I slipped away for a moment to catch my breath. That's when Mom approached again. I spoke with Lila, she said, her voice hushed. She's struggling. Her engagement fell apart right after everything came to light. I nodded. I'd figured as much. What did you tell her? The truth, Mom said quietly. That actions come with consequences. I looked at her and nodded slowly. For the first time, I believed she meant it. What about Dad? I asked. He found work at a small real estate firm out of state, she replied, looking tired. I don't think we'll be getting back together. I turned to the window. The last rays of sunlight spilled across the skyline, painting the glass in gold. All the rage I used to carry had softened. The weight of betrayal had been replaced with something steadier, acceptance. Strength. A fresh start, I said softly. Yes, Mom replied. For all of us. I offered her a faint smile. The future still had its questions, but I felt ready. No more secrets. No more pretending. The past couldn't hurt me anymore. I was finally home, in myself.